I spent a significant part of my adult life in Limon, Costa Rica, a place that became my home after leaving my native country in search of new experiences. The Caribbean coast, with its crystal-clear waters and abundant marine life, was exactly what I was looking for. A paradise for someone like me, who had diving running through my veins. For nearly a decade, I dedicated every available moment to perfecting my underwater skills, turning what started as a simple hobby into an obsession that eventually consumed my entire existence. In the years following my arrival, I participated in countless expeditions throughout the Caribbean, exploring everything from historic shipwrecks to the most complex underwater cave systems. It was as if each dive brought me closer to the secrets the ocean guarded in its depths. The unique sensation of floating in an environment completely detached from our terrestrial reality fascinated me in a way that words could hardly describe. The absolute silence, the constant pressure, the enveloping darkness, all of it became part of an almost mystical experience that connected me deeply with that submerged world. Over time, I built a solid reputation within the local diving community. My experience and, most importantly, my caution were recognized by everyone. I frequently received invitations to participate in more challenging expeditions along the Caribbean coast. It was a recognition that filled me with pride and, at the same time, drove me to seek even more knowledge and technical improvement. It was during one of these jobs that I met Kevin, an American who had settled in Costa Rica a few years earlier. He owned an impressive boat, the kind that made other divers sigh with envy when they saw it docked at the port. At the time, I must admit, I didn't care much about how he managed to maintain a vessel of that size. I had learned that in certain situations, some questions are better left unasked. Our friendship developed naturally, strengthened by our shared love for the sea and the relentless pursuit of new challenges. Kevin had an impressive network of connections throughout the Caribbean and always seemed to know about unexplored places, little-known routes, and underwater caves that few dared to visit. He was the kind of person who could obtain information that didn't appear on any map or official guide, making him a valuable partner for someone like me, always in search of new discoveries. We spent hours talking about our past experiences, sharing stories of memorable dives and discussing advanced techniques. Kevin had a unique way of telling his adventures, always with a sparkle in his eyes that revealed his genuine passion for what he did. He knew every reef, every current, and every peculiarity of the Caribbean Sea like the back of his hand. Our partnership became more and more frequent, and soon we were diving together regularly. We started with simpler explorations, but gradually increased the complexity of our expeditions. Kevin had a particular way of planning each dive, always considering every detail and possible contingency. His meticulousness perfectly complemented my more cautious approach. During our explorations, I discovered that Kevin had a special talent for finding unique places. He seemed to have a sixth sense for locating exceptional dive spots that weren't listed in any tourist guide. Sometimes, they were small caves hidden within seemingly ordinary reefs. Other times, they were little-known shipwrecks that held fascinating stories. Our dives together became legendary within the local community. Other divers often sought us out to hear about our discoveries and adventures. Of course, we kept some of our findings secret. Not everything we found in the depths needed to be shared with the world. It was as if we had our own exclusive club, where only the two of us knew the true hidden treasures beneath the Caribbean waters. Kevin's presence significantly changed my life as a diver. His extensive knowledge of the region and his connections opened doors I hadn't even known existed. Through him, I met other experienced divers, participated in exclusive expeditions, and gained access to state-of-the-art equipment that would normally have been out of my reach. Our routine developed naturally. We met regularly to plan new dives, discuss potential routes, and share information about maritime conditions. Kevin's boat became our headquarters, where we spent hours poring over nautical maps, some official, others not so much, tracing routes and marking points of interest. Over time, our joint reputation grew even more. We became known as the duo that never turned down a challenge, but also never compromised safety. This combination of boldness and prudence earned us respect from both the most conservative and the most adventurous divers. We were often sought after for technical diving consultations and complex explorations. Our friendship transcended the professional environment. We began sharing not only our dives, but also our personal stories, our dreams, and our concerns. Kevin became more than just a diving partner. He was a confidant, someone I could count on both in the depths of the ocean and in moments of relaxation on solid ground. Our diving routine followed its usual course until that Saturday afternoon, after we had returned from an exploration near Coweta National Park. We were sitting on the deck of Kevin's boat when he casually mentioned the existence of an underwater cave located about 20 kilometers off the Nicaraguan coast. According to him, one of his contacts had discovered the entrance during a routine survey, but few had the necessary combination of courage and skill to properly explore it. Today, as I sit in my apartment in Limon, staring at the sea through the window, unable to even step into a swimming pool, I still wonder why I accepted that proposal. Maybe it was Kevin's contagious enthusiasm, or perhaps it was my insatiable desire to discover something truly unique in the depths of the Caribbean. The ocean had always held that power over me. It lured me into its depths with promises of unexplored wonders, an alien and unknown world hiding just below the surface, waiting to reveal its mysteries to those bold enough to take the plunge. Kevin had meticulously planned every detail, as was his habit. We would set out before sunrise, taking advantage of the favorable weather conditions typical of that time of year in the Caribbean. The chosen location was considerably far from commercial routes and tourist areas, ensuring complete privacy during our exploration. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, he insisted repeatedly, to explore something that few human eyes had ever seen. We spent the following weeks carefully preparing for the expedition. Every piece of equipment was checked and rechecked. We studied regional maps, analyzed ocean current patterns, and reviewed long-term weather forecasts. Kevin had contacts who provided us with detailed oceanographic data about the area, information that would normally be unavailable to ordinary divers. During this preparation period, our excitement grew each day. We spent hours discussing different scenarios and establishing contingency plans for any situation we could imagine. Kevin shared everything he knew about the cave with me, although, looking back now, I realized there was something strange about his knowledge, details that didn't quite add up. We conducted preparatory dives in other caves in the region, reinforcing our familiarity with the specific safety procedures for this type of environment. We reviewed underwater communication protocols and practiced emergency situations. The synergy between us was at its peak. We were like a well-oiled machine, each anticipating the other's movements. The special equipment needed for the expedition arrived gradually. Kevin seemed to have unlimited resources when it came to getting what we needed. High-powered flashlights specially designed for cave exploration, extra air tanks, state-of-the-art underwater navigation instruments. Nothing was too expensive or too difficult to obtain. On the night before the expedition, we conducted a final inspection of all the equipment on Kevin's boat. We checked every regulator, every pressure gauge, every backup air tank. In deep cave dives, there is no room for error. Every piece of equipment must function perfectly because there is no plan B when you are dozens of meters below the surface. I distinctly remember feeling a strange unease as we organized the equipment. It was as if something deep in my mind was trying to warn me, a subtle premonition that I chose to ignore. After all, after so many years of diving, I had learned to trust my instincts. But Kevin's enthusiasm was contagious, and his confidence ultimately outweighed my fleeting doubts. We decided to sleep on the boat that night to ensure our departure before dawn. The plan was to set sail during the early morning hours, taking advantage of the calm sea that usually precedes sunrise in the Caribbean. Kevin spent most of the night double-checking and triple-checking the coordinates, adjusting our route with an almost obsessive precision. The night was exceptionally clear, with a sky full of stars reflecting on the still surface of the sea. The boat swayed gently, anchored in the harbor, as we made the final preparations for the following day. Lying in my bunk, trying to sleep, I couldn't stop thinking about what we might find the next day. The idea of exploring a truly unknown underwater cave was something every diver dreams of, but few ever get the chance to do. It was the kind of discovery that could put us on the map of the international diving community. Little did I know that this would be the last night I would sleep in peace, free from the nightmares that haunt me today. The descent began smoothly. The water was exceptionally clear for that depth. allowing us to observe the gradual transformation of the ocean's blue into increasingly darker and deeper shades. At 99 feet below the surface, I felt the familiar pressure on my body, 4 times greater than atmospheric pressure. The sunlight struggled in vain to penetrate that depth, creating an underwater darkness where shadows danced at the edges of our vision. Only creatures truly adapted to the darkness inhabited this realm. I checked my gauges again, an automatic habit after so many years, and looked up to see Kevin signaling toward the cave entrance, which was beginning to take shape in front of us. We glided smoothly through the water, floating above the ocean floor covered in a hypnotic blend of algae and sediment. My narrow-lensed mask limited my peripheral vision, but I still tried to absorb every detail of this submerged world. The silence was absolute, broken only by the rhythmic sound of our air bubbles rising to the surface. When we finally reached the cave entrance, Kevin began the most crucial safety procedure, securing the guideline. I watched as he worked methodically, fastening the rope to a particularly sturdy rock formation. That line was our only connection to the outside world, our Ariadne's thread in the underwater labyrinth that awaited us. As I held my flashlight to illuminate Kevin's work, something in the darkness ahead began to unsettle me. There was something wrong with that opening, something I couldn't quite identify. The cave entrance seemed more sinister than it should, as if it radiated an aura of warning that my instincts picked up on, but my rational mind refused to process. That's when I heard it, a deep, low sound coming from the depths of the cave. It wasn't like anything I'd ever heard in all my years of diving. It was a muffled roar that reverberated through the rock structure, reaching us like a threatening whisper. At that depth, sound wasn't just heard, it was felt. The vibration traveled through my chest, resonated in my bones, and sent a chill down my spine, even through my wetsuit. We exchanged looks through our masks. Kevin had heard it too, but we were already there. We had spent weeks preparing for this exploration. Ego and curiosity spoke louder than instinct. Kevin checked the guideline one last time and, after a brief thumbs up, we picked up the abandoned cylinder we had found among the rocks. It was a strange discovery. No experienced diver would abandon such valuable equipment. The metal still gleamed, reflecting our lights, suggesting it hadn't been there for long. The cave's interior felt like stepping into another world. Our beams of light cut through the absolute darkness, revealing rock formations that had likely never been seen by human eyes. The water was eerily clear, as if nothing had disturbed its eternal stillness. We moved forward, always keeping one hand on the guideline, our only lifeline to safety. We soon came across a fork in the tunnel. Kevin signaled, silently asking which path we should take. I moved my light between the 2 options, carefully studying each opening. A slight current flowed from the left tunnel, a good sign when exploring underwater caves. I indicated that direction, and Kevin agreed with a nod. We continued our exploration methodically, paying close attention to every detail of our surroundings. At 110 feet deep, even with all my experience, the pressure was oppressive, as if the ocean itself wanted to force us out. That was when something caught my attention in the beam of my flashlight, an object that stood out from the natural rock formations. I cautiously approached, careful not to disturb the sediment on the floor. It was a diver's slate, the kind used for underwater communication when hand signals aren't enough. When I pulled it from the sand, my heart pounded as I saw a hastily scribbled message. Size, approximately 2 meters tall, black skin with texture, resembles a moray eel but with humanoid features. A chill ran through me as I passed the slate to Kevin. He read it quickly and tucked it into his equipment bag. We exchanged a look that conveyed more than words ever could, but we kept moving forward. The tunnel gradually narrowed until we reached a point where we would need to remove our tanks to proceed. It was a crucial decision. Removing our breathing equipment at this depth was extremely risky, but our curiosity had long since overpowered our caution. We decided to continue. Kevin went first, pushing his tank through the tight passage. Then it was my turn. For a terrifying moment, I got stuck. Panic began to rise in my chest as I struggled against the narrow opening. I forced myself to breathe slowly, controlling the fear. Finally, after exhaling completely, I managed to contort myself through the passage. On the other side, the space opened into a breathtaking chamber. We stood on a natural ledge that dropped into an abyss whose depth we couldn't determine. No matter how powerful our flashlights were, their beams were swallowed by the absolute darkness below. It was as if we were standing at the edge of the void itself. As I knelt at the edge to try and better illuminate the depths, I felt something hard beneath my knee. It was a professional camera, clearly designed for underwater use. With slightly trembling hands, I managed to turn it on. The screen still worked, and the last recorded video began to play. The footage showed another diver exploring the same cave. Suddenly, a dark shadow quickly crossed the frame. The diver looked around, clearly disturbed, and then, the horror. He clutched his own throat as if he were suffocating. Threads of dark red blood began to spread around him like a macabre cloud. Another shadow flashed across the screen, and in an instant, the diver's mask and regulator disappeared, along with a significant portion of his face. The camera shook violently in the hands of the person filming. In one sudden, final movement, the body was violently pulled into the darkness. I was paralyzed, my fingers gripping the camera tightly enough to leave marks on the rubber of my suit. The recording ended there, but the horror of those images would forever be burned into my memory. Then it happened. A deafening roar, far more powerful than the first one we had heard, filled the cave. The sound was so intense that I could feel the vibration coursing through my body. Panicked, I let go of the camera, which disappeared into the darkness below. Kevin frantically signaled for us to turn back, and I didn't need a second warning. We swam desperately back to the narrow passage. My hands trembled as I tried to push my tank through the tight space. I managed to get through first and turned to help Kevin. He handed me his tank, and at that moment, everything changed. His head jerked violently backward, as if something had grabbed him. A muffled scream filled the water around us, and bubbles rose frantically as blood began to stain the cave's crystal-clear water. I grabbed Kevin's arms, trying to pull him to my side, but something on the other side was pulling with far greater force. It was like a grotesque battle, with my friend as the prize. Suddenly, his regulator was torn from his mouth, and his head slumped forward, motionless. Kevin's body was now lodged in the narrow passage, acting as a barrier between me and whatever was on the other side. The roar echoed again, closer this time. I knew I had only seconds to decide. With a crushing weight in my chest and tears mixing with the water inside my mask, I made the only possible choice. I left Kevin's body behind and swam with all my strength toward the exit of the cave system. The way back was a blur of terror and adrenaline. I followed the guideline as if my life depended on it, and it truly did. I ignored all decompression protocols during the ascent. At that moment, I would much rather risk decompression sickness than stay in that water for even one more second. When I finally surfaced, the sun was still shining in the sky, as if the horror I had just witnessed had been nothing more than a nightmare. But it was real. Everything was horribly real. I was found a few hours later by a fishing boat, dehydrated and in shock. I spent the following weeks in a hyperbaric chamber, recovering from the effects of the rapid ascent. Today, a month later, I still wake up every night screaming, reliving those final moments. Kevin's body is still down there, along with all the mysteries of that cursed cave. The authorities in Costa Rica found nothing when they investigated the site, or at least, that's what they say. I don't know if I believe that. I don't know if I believe in much of anything these days. I can no longer enter the water, not even in a shallow pool. The mere sound of running water is sometimes enough to trigger a panic attack. My passion for diving, which defined my entire adult life, is now nothing but a bitter memory. I feel like my sanity slips through my fingers each day, like the water I once loved. That's why I'm sharing this story. I need someone to know what happened. I need this to serve as a warning for anyone, like me, who is drawn to the mysteries of the deep. There are things in the depths of the ocean that defy our understanding, things that should remain unexplored. And sometimes the price of curiosity is high, too high.